Hello, I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me on our news panel, Rachel Gordon, staff writer with the San Francisco Chronicle on cuts to MUNI and city workers. Carla Marinucci, political reporter, also with the Chronicle, on Jerry Brown's announcement and other political news. Lisa Krieger, higher education reporter for the San Jose Mercury News on the day of action to save public education. Lisa, yesterday's outpouring was a demonstration of just how frustrated people are over funding for education. Mm-hmm. What was the impact?
Got people's attention. If you were sitting on a freeway at 880 or 80 or down at Santa Cruz, a lot of anger, and I think their message did get through. What's happening is that the kids are paying more for less, and they're very frustrated. It's like you're living in an apartment, $1,000 a month rent, all of a sudden your rent's raised to $1,300, but your gas and water gets turned off. I mean, that's the perception the kids have, and they're having trouble getting classes, having trouble getting what they need to graduate. All that being said, though, there isn't any money, and the budget used to have a general fund that could dedicate more to higher education. It has other commitments now, other priorities. So what needs to happen, or what has happened, is that tuition's increased. Aid has increased as well. We're moving to a high tuition, high aid state. That wasn't the case. A lot of people had expectations education would be free, and that's not happening anymore.
Lisa, talk about how much the tuition has gone up, and then California is still a bargain, though. So
it's an absolute bargain. However, it's gone up 30% in 1 year. And that's very hard for households to plan. I mean, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, there was a plan for how fees would increase, and it was very methodical, it was very predictable, no more than 10% a year, and you could plan a budget around that. When the money wasn't there, they desperately needed to raise revenues, and they did it 30%. Community colleges less so, but you're right. All that being said, if you still compare us to Pennsylvania, to Michigan, to Vermont, Florida, it's still a very good education.
That's very little comfort to say that it's a bargain and it's 30%.
Right.
How can families survive this?
Tuition for families making less than $70,000, those families do get support. It's complicated. The financial aid network is complex, not well coordinated, but there's federal aid, there's institutional aid, other places to go. The middle class is what will be squeezed. I mean, we do, I'm in Palo Alto, and there are kids who go to a strong high school or private high schools so they can get into the University of California at Berkeley and have a cheap education for 4 years. So that's, there are a lot of thoughts about how do we reform this in the long haul, and a lot of ways to make the schools more efficient and to charge fees that represent more of what we're offering.
So Lisa, we're seeing that tuition's going up, but we're also seeing that cuts are being made, that there aren't a number of classes and things. So people are paying for what? And what is being cut? What's the effect at the college level when there's not the money that they say they need to run their institutions?
Exactly. Well, what happens is that if you need biology, chemistry, whatever, to progress for your major, you'll move much slowly through the system. And the big fear is that our graduation rates will fall, and the time to degree, it's called, will be longer. And that's hard on the state as well, and it's more expensive. So some of the reforms that are being mentioned are ways to improve transfer rates, eliminating some of the redundancies at campuses. A lot of interesting proposals about maybe the flagship campuses should charge more than UC Merced. They're short-term budget problems, but they're also long-term problems, structural problems that, you hate to waste a crisis, and we're coming up 50 years into the master plan, and it offers an opportunity to totally rethink how we handle higher education in this state.
Let me ask you about the protests that went on. So people were angry, as you said, they got attention, especially when they went on the freeways, but so what? Who was listening to them, and is anyone going to do anything about it?
The governor said yesterday, I'm happy to see you here. I hope this puts pressure on the legislature, and he would like to see greater funding. In his January budget, he proposed greater funding. I talked to Assemblyman Cotto from San Jose yesterday, and there's some tax loopholes he says he'll close. And maybe, oil taxes, taxes on entertainment. People are looking all over
We live in a state, though, where taxes are not
Exactly,
allowed. Right?
exactly.
But what about California's inability to make it into the first round of the what is it?
Race
Race
the
to
race
the top.
to the top.
Race to the
Right,
top.
Yeah.
Big disappointment, and we're not sure why. The expectation is that, or the assumption is that teachers needed to sign on to reforms that were required if you wanted this aid, and we did not get the one half
Don't we have
needed
another
to
bite at
sign
that
on.
apple?
What is
though?
Race to the Top? Is that federal funding?
Federal funding from Obama to real substantial reforms in our school that comes with giant grant money. There will be a second chance this summer for an additional appeal. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We certainly need it.
Well, I'm going to talk to Carla about somebody that think they might have some answers to our problem. Yesterday, Jerry Brown made his announcement. And did he have solutions to any of the multitude of problems that the station
Yeah,
nation is
and
facing?
Jerry Brown did, as you noted, had that video announcement and said that his solutions are that he has an insider's knowledge but an outsider's mind when it comes to handling the problems of the state. That is, he's been here for 40 years in public service. He's embracing this idea of public service and the fact that he has been Secretary of State, Oakland mayor, etc. This is a year when not a lot of politicians want to do that. So when he's talking about solutions to the problems, he's saying he's going to bring together all 120 legislators up there in Sacramento personally, that politics is about personality. And he argues you can't have somebody from outside the system who doesn't know these personalities to come in and really knock heads together and get these budget issues fixed. I think what we heard from Jerry Brown this week, we got to interview him for about an hour, was he said, I'm not going to lie to you about how hard or easy this is going to be. He said it might take a year or two before this budget is balanced. And
But he's saying no new taxes. So what is his proposal?
he's
Will
saying
there be more
no new
cuts,
taxes
or-
unless the voters approve
Right.
them. So he's leaving that door open. He took a lot of centrist positions, though, with us in our interview with him, and it was a really interesting. Jerry Brown has been painted as this, moonbeam lefty by the Republicans. The fact is, he says he's more realistic, more pragmatic, and more conservative than he was when he was governor.
Right. I mean, we saw
30
him kind of
years ago.
hone those moderate credentials when he was mayor of Oakland, right? I mean, he's kind of a law and order,
That's right,
pro-development
yeah.
kind of guy. The
Right.
Governor Moonbeam was a long time ago. He's really moved much more towards the right, but he certainly isn't on the right.
Yeah,
in
no,
California.
absolutely. When you're talking about some of the positions, he said he's against sanctuary cities. He's against driver's license for undocumented immigrants. He doesn't want to touch Prop 13. He says, I'm not going to wade into that. Law and order, you're right. And I think this creates a challenge. There's no question about it for Meg Whitman, the former eBay CEO, and Steve Poizner, the other Republican, the state insurance commissioner. Because Jerry Brown no longer has a challenger on the Democratic side after Gavin Newsom dropped out. So he can go to the middle already, and the other two are battling over who's the most conservative.
Interesting. Whitman's asserting he actually left the state in worse condition after he was there. And she points, of course, to unemployment rates. Is there any truth in that?
Well, no, he says he had a surplus, and of course he did. And one of the reasons Prop 13 passed is because voters didn't like that surplus at the time. But then he embraced Prop 13, and he said he created 2 million jobs in his last term in office. You're going to be hearing a lot, with 40 years. The Whitman campaign already says they're going to have the biggest opposition research effort ever done in American politics, and she's got $39 million, so she can pay for it. So it'll be really interesting.
There's lots of excitement, though, in the Republican primaries, and
Yes.
just this week we had the first debate between the Republican candidates for the U.S. Senate position,
we
now
did.
held by Barbara Boxer.
That's right, and you've got Carla Fiorina, the former Hewlett-Packard CEO, against Tom Campbell, the very moderate former congressman from the South Bay. And then you've got Chuck DeVore, the assemblyman from Southern California, who's very conservative. And they really battled it out in a debate they had. And unusually, this debate was a lot over Israel and over who's a bigger supporter of Israel. Campbell has been surprisingly strong in this race. I mean, when he jumped from the governor's race to the Senate race, a lot of people thought, what is this all about? He's ahead in the polls. The polls show that he could best beat Barbara Boxer at this moment. Fiorina, who everybody thought would be the front runner running away with this because she's got more money, has made some stumbles with an ad that was a little crazy that showed Campbell as a demon sheep. I mean, it has been an interesting race already, and it's getting very, very nasty and contentious.
So how's Barbara Boxer reacting to the Republicans now? Does she just, because she's the incumbent, does she just kind of sit back and watch them battle it out? Or
I think
is she going
Boxer
strong
has
at this
got to
point?
be now nervous about what's going on. She had a press call with everyone today. They're saying they're going to go ahead and get these young Obama voters to come out for her. The fact is that what we heard today in the debate, all three of these Republican challengers are on top of the issues in California. All three are really good communicators. Boxer's going to have her work cut out for her.
We have to move along, but quickly, can you say why the issue was Israel?
Yeah, it all goes back to Tom Campbell, a donation he took from a Florida professor, Sami al-Aryan, who later pleaded guilty to conspiracy to aid a Palestinian group. Long story short, Campbell says he didn't know about those ties at the time. Campbell says he's always been a supporter of Israel, but the charges have come out from Fiorina that Campbell is not a supporter of Israel. In fact, they tried to suggest he's a supporter of terrorist groups. He really beat back at that today.
Well, lots of political
yes,
action.
yeah.
We'll turn to somebody else that has a lot of buzz going. But in this case, Rachel Gordon, Mayor Newsom made a threat to do something that he actually did today. Sent out notices to 15,000 people.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't like to come to work on Fridays, especially in this economy. But about half the city workers, a little more than that, got pink slips from City Hall. This is something that Mayor Newsom had threatened to do. He said he had to do it to try to save the city from fiscal financial ruin. What he said, though, you're going to get pink slips. You now work 40 hours a week. We're going to rehire you back, or most of you back, and that's what has people nervous. In a couple of weeks, they actually aren't going to lose their jobs. At a 37.5-hour week, 6.2% wage cut they'll get, that could save the city about $100 million. They're estimating over the year. San Francisco's looking at a $522 million deficit. Now that's kind of the opening salvo, really, Belva, for this, because the unions are going, you do this, we're going to sue you. Newsom's saying, come back with a better plan. I'm willing to listen to you. We've got to cut costs. This is my way to do it. If you have another way, let's do it. But what Newsom's whole thing is, you might be taking home less money, you might be working fewer hours, but you'll still have a job and there'll still be services kept largely intact.
Considering the legal issues that the governors had doing furloughs, that plan wasn't working. It looks like this is at least a way to keep these people on the job and on the payroll.
Right. I mean, that's what Newsom's saying. I mean, it really is kind of the beginning. The budget season is just starting. The mayor has until June 1st to present his budget proposal to the Board of Supervisors. And then really the big fights are going to happen. But Newsom's really been going after labor this time. Some of the big unions are kind of kept out of it at this point, the politically potent ones, the firefighters and the police officers who've got big raises over the last several years. Newsom saying, yeah, you've got big raises, but we're still going to come back to you and ask you to give up about 6%. Everyone's supposed to be doing that in the city.
So who is losing their jobs? Who does this affect?
Well, we don't really know at this point, but everyone got this, from the street sweepers got the tickets, the healthcare workers, the clerks for the Board of Supervisors. A lot of them are walking around looking very angry and upset, really not knowing. I think a lot of people have been through this situation outside of City Hall for more than a year now with them coming. Just the whole uncertainty, and that has people on edge.
Well, so that's a big fight with those unions. But let's move to MUNI, where there truly is a bigger fight.
Right. There's been a big fight, actually, with the MUNI operators for a long time. The city's been trying to get concessions from them, labor concessions, about $15 million over 2 years' time. The drivers' union rejected this, and this is a union that is virtually guaranteed to be the second highest paid among transit operators in the nation. It's been enshrined in San Francisco City Charter, kind of the Bible of city government.
Said, what are they getting an hour at MUNI?
About $27 an hour for this. But as that's happening with not gaining labor concessions, we're also seeing very deep service cuts of about 10% are set to be enacted on May 1st. 330,000 or so service hours a week. That means you're going to be waiting longer for buses and streetcars and cable cars, and when they do come, they're going to be a lot more crowded.
So this is the dilemma we're seeing all over the state, but you're talking about some of these unions are really on the firing lines. When you're talking about the cuts, do they realize they're going to have to give a little something? Even Jerry Brown said that this week.
Well, they've so far they're kind of playing this game of chicken in San Francisco. Now there's this other kind of the wild card that's coming out. One of the supervisors, Sean Ellsburn, is threatening to go to the ballot later this year to try to get it so there will not be one of the top paid systems in California and San Francisco here for the union drivers. MUNI drivers. He would like to see it subject to collective bargaining with all the other ones. The drivers are saying, you do that, it's going to be chaos on the streets, we're not going to take it. And Ellsburn's saying, look, I've got the people behind me on this.
But the cuts like charging for transfers and senior passes, are those still on the table?
No, the transfers, there was, I think that lived for about 6 hours earlier that they wanted to start charging for transfers. They also took off raising the prices for discounted passes. But if for express routes and others, the prices are going up.
They'll start charging fees for Coit Tower, I understand, to visit, and the Botanical Gardens,
Right.
the suburban surcharge
Yeah, they're
for
trying
those
to,
of us out of town.
Right, they're really trying to go after out-of-towners now. The Recreation and Park Commission just this week said if you're coming from out of town, you want to go to the Arboretum and Golden Gate Park, lovely gardens there, you're going to have to start paying $7 to come in there. However,
you can come to San Jose for free.
Right, that can also be stopped, though, by the Board of Supervisors. So it's just the beginning of the budget battle in City Hall. It's going to be a big one.
The pain is spread all around, wherever we look, right? So thank you all very much for joining me today.